guys, we've got a fun review today as we're talking Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the very beginning to Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is crazy to think. It felt like, to me at least, even though there were so many different projects in Phase 4, it went by fairly quickly, but it's a fresh new phase, lots of potential on the horizon as we're going into the multiverse saga, and we're also getting a lighthearted adventure with Ant-Man and the crew, as this is now a trilogy. Quantumania follows Scott, Hope, Hank, Janet, and Cassie exploring the quantum realm where they embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. As far as the Ant-Man films go, both of them aren't my favorite entries in the MCU or anything. Both of them, especially the first film, I do get some enjoyment out of due to the campy, comedic charm both of those films had, which carries over slightly into Quantumania while also heavily raising the stakes compared to those two films as we are exploring the quantum realm. Since we spend the majority of the film's runtime inside of the quantum realm, we finally get to see it in its full glory, and I really admire the level of creativity that went into fully realizing all of the strange, psychedelic visuals and the various kinds of characters that Scott and everyone encounter while they're in this journey. It's really wild-looking stuff. I saw some people compare it to Star Wars, which I suppose is one of many influences, Star Wars, Star Trek. For me, I was reminded a lot of Spy Kids just because of all the CGI backgrounds, and the color-coded suits reminded me a lot of Spy Kids 3. One of my favorite elements about Quantumania is the big emphasis here story-wise on family, but especially the dynamic between Scott, Hope, and Cassie. But really, it's the entire family, because at the core of this, it is a family adventure. The story, honestly, is at its absolute best when everyone is together and playing off one another, because unfortunately, the story does stagger a bit whenever they are separated. That isn't to say that I wasn't having a fun time in general as the story unfolded, it's just that I think it could have been a bit better compared to other MCU entries. But the massive thing that we have to discuss when it comes to Quantumania is the villain. A lot of the hype around this film and the potential future of the MCU does lie on the villain in Quantumania. Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. The guy, he's on a completely other level here as Kang the Conqueror. He is very different from He Who Remains, who we saw in Loki. Just his overall presence and the way that he speaks to everyone, it's extremely intimidating, and no pun intended, he does conquer just about every single scene that he's in with this commanding presence, and even gets to showcase here some of that villainous potential in the action sequences where we might take his character in future MCU projects. There's absolutely a framework here for him to be the next big bad villain of the MCU, similar to Thanos. I could definitely see him down the line, like when we get to Kang Dynasty, him being that threat level that Thanos was, or maybe even surpassing it, because there's some sequences in here I was pretty nervous. I was not sure if Scott and them were gonna survive. Even if I've joked many times in the past that I was rooting for Kang to win and that Scott dies, I didn't actually want Scott to die. I think Paul Rudd is great as this character, and he's still great as him in Quantumania. Scott Lang has so much charm, and I think that does help balance out the heart and humor, despite the danger of this film being much higher than any of the other Ant-Man films. Also, another fun tie-in is you can actually get the book that Scott Lang wrote on Amazon currently. I'm thinking about buying it right now, to be honest. Although I do think Paul Rudd and Jonathan Majors are the major acting standouts in Quantumania, the cast in general is fairly solid. I liked a lot of the cast here. Michelle Pfeiffer probably is the biggest standout of the supporting characters just because we're finally giving her character a lot more to work with in this one. And Hank Pym, Michael Douglas, I actually have always liked Michael Douglas a lot as this character, but both him and Michelle Pfeiffer get a whole lot more to do here. When it comes to the character of Cassie Lang, now played by Kathryn Newton, which I am still kind of disappointed that they recasted the character for this. There's certainly room after this for her character to grow. There is some potential. There's nothing here that particularly amazed me about the character, even when she's involved in these big, over-the-top, crazy action sequences. So I'm hoping as we continue to see her in other future MCU projects, she's going to get better as a character. If I had to guess any character that was going to be divisive, though, it's going to be MODOK, because more or less, MODOK was exactly what I was anticipating going in, for better or for worse. He's a very ridiculous character if you've read the comic books or seen him in anything like the Marvel's Avengers game or his own Hulu show. He's generally portrayed as a generally ridiculous character, and it's going to be one of those things where you love him or hate him, I feel. The design here, I'm a little bit iffy on, even still after seeing it in the film. I think it kind of leans a little bit too goofy. It still nevertheless was kind of cool seeing him in action in these fight sequences. The action in general, while it's nothing mind-blowing like I've said about other aspects, it's your typical MCU kind of action. And I do think they get creative with some of the elements because of the fact that Ant-Man can grow huge. There's a lot of giant man sequences in this film. While I do think that Quantumania is on par with the first film as the best film in the trilogy, there are some stretches in this where my interest did wane a little. Multiple times my mind kind of wandered, because as charming humor-wise as those first two films were, the comedy here is not as prevalent and I didn't laugh as much as I had hoped for. Obviously, comedy and anything comedic in general is subjective, so you might be laughing your ass off all throughout this, but for me at least, it didn't have that same type of humor as the first two Ant-Mans, just because this is a much more serious, higher stakes, dangerous mission for them compared to the lighthearted romps of the first two Ant-Man films. Regardless, with the way that we end things in Quantumania, I am very intrigued where we're going to go with all these characters for the future of the MCU, because there are some plot threads left hanging here that I cannot wait to see where we go. All around, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I felt is a solid start to Phase 4 and helps move the needle forward for the multiverse saga with the seeds that are planted here. While nothing about the film is mind-blowing, there's a decent amount of charm and excitement watching these characters battle it out with Kang in the quantum realm, along with the fact there are two post-credit scenes that are varying levels of excitement without going into too many details. I think one of them is going to be a big standout hit for fans, and one of them is still cool, but not as cool. But now you've heard my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Make sure you share your thoughts down below. What did you think of the film? Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? Are you excited where we're potentially going to go with Phase 5 after this? You're not excited yet? And also, how are you feeling about Kang the Conqueror after this? Are you excited to see more Jonathan Majors in this role? Are you not excited yet? Need some more convincing? Because I'm sure we're going to see a whole lot more of him down the road. I mean, we have Kang Dynasty confirmed later on a couple years from now. Anyways, thank you guys as always. Check out the videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel so always update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Next time, I'll see you guys later.